My name's John Elliott. I founded Ebac Limited 40 years ago, mainly to make dehumidifiers. 30 years ago, we introduced the first domestic dehumidifier to the European market. I'm going to talk about two different types of dehumidifiers here. Both have got the same purpose, to control domestic condensation in winter in the UK households. We've got a refrigeration type, compressor type, and a desiccant type. Although they do the same job, they're very different in their technologies. This is a typical Ebac dehumidifier which uses refrigeration compressor technology, which we believe is very energy efficient. This surface here is cooled by the compressor, which causes the water to condense. But all the energy absorbed here to cause that condensation is returned to the air here, which means that the air comes out of the unit slightly warmer than it goes in, so it's very energy efficient. An alternative domestic dehumidifier is the desiccant. Although they're supposed to do the same thing, they're totally different technologies. We have a desiccant wheel like this, which rotates and absorbs moisture. Once the moisture's been absorbed, we need to move it from there and put it in the bucket. To do that, we need this 650 watt heater. So while this machine takes about 150 watts, this takes 600. So it takes a lot more energy to dry this. If, for example, we assume that a household it needs to be dry for about 200 days of the year, we need to take out about 2 litres a day. If, on that basis, this would cost about £70 to run, this would cost about £170 to run, taking the same amount of water out over the same period. We actually make the desiccant dehumidifiers for our industrial market, where we think you need to take out a lot of water, like flood damage, and energy consumption isn't important. The desiccant is a very good tool. It takes out a lot of water, but it does cost quite a bit to run. In the 30 years since we introduced this dehumidifier, we've sold over 1.25 million dehumidifiers, and all the feedback we get tells us that taking in about 2 litres of water per day is the right amount to cure the problem. Here's another form of dehumidifier. This is known as the Peltier effect dehumidifier. It uses the same kind of idea as a compressor dehumidifier. It's a cold surface where water condenses. But the Peltier effect is much smaller in capacity and less energy efficient. It'll take out 1/10 of the water of a domestic dehumidifier, which isn't sufficient to solve the problem in a household. Our experience tells us that you need to take out between 1 and 2 litres a day, depending on the number of occupants of the house, the type of house, and the conditions outside. A very important aspect about domestic dehumidifiers is the control system. And in the same way, there are different types of dehumidifiers and the different control systems. We learned many years ago that a simple humidistat wasn't sufficient, because as the winter progresses and the weather gets colder, you need to change the relative humidity you set the unit at. And we found that people either set it too high and it never ran, or it was set too low and ran too often. From that, we learned and developed a system called Smart Control, which takes care of it completely. It stores the information from your home over 24 hours and knows the right time to run to make sure we solve the problem, but don't run too often and waste electricity. Of course, dehumidifiers have got to solve the problem of condensation and dampness, but another important aspect is the sound level. Now, these two systems, although quite different, are quite similar in sound intensity. The biggest source of noise is the airflow, and they both move air, so they're quite similar. The desiccant dehumidifier is physically smaller and significantly lighter, so it is easier to move around.